everyone, my name is Lydia, aka Miss Moonfruit, and this was my first time attending a World Orchid Conference. The 24th edition held in Dresden, Germany. I spent 2 full days at the show, and honestly, I had no idea what to expect. But the moment we walked in, it was clear this was going to be something special. Since I know many of my international orchid friends were able to make the trip, I wanted to put together a curated look at some of my favorite displays, orchids, and award winners from the event. Let's have a look. This was the first big booth when you walked in, and this already exceeded my expectations. The sheer size, amount of orchids, and the props they used at this display really amazed me. Generally, this was a common theme across all displays of the show. The amount of effort and attention to detail that people put in was noticeable immediately. To say this was one of my favorite displays might be a bit premature, but honestly, I really liked it, and I'll let you be the judge of that at the end. These flowers looked perfect and had no blemishes at all. They had a slight sparkle, which was hard to see on camera, but in person, they were really pretty. The colors of this Cattleya reminded me of the sunset, so that's why I picked this orchid. Here are some Orangus orchids, which are one of my favorite genera. These had lots of blooms and bloom spikes for such small plants. These orchids were truly spectacular, and the judges seemed to think that as well. Equigenera had a really nice display with Sarcochilus. I like how small they are and how many blooms and colors they have. They also have a lot of intricate flowers with patterns on them. At first glance, I thought this was an Ingracum. It's a huge plant that has comparatively small flowers. But as it turns out, it's actually a Gemellia major. It's closely related to Ingracum, as you might be able to tell by its characteristically long nectar spurs. This was definitely a really cool find. The next booth was the Hungarian Orchid Society, and this was also one of my favorite displays because it was on theme for the Easter holidays. They added a really unique touch with this spinning flower arrangement, as well as this nice Cattleya that looks super gold in the spotlight, and also one of my beloved microturangas under a big cloche. This Schoenorchis gemata was very stunning. It had small but very colorful blooms, and also the amount of blooms was extremely impressive. Our next stop was this Asian-themed booth with parasols. It had a dendrobium forest that to me looked like bamboo. And I especially loved this small bonsai structure full of mini orchids. I found this Neophanatia falcata, which was recently reclassified as a Vanda. It's actually the best smelling orchid I've ever smelled. I'd also love to point out this really cute dendrobium in bloom. It has those super unique cylindrical leaves that stand out in every way. I know that for a fact because we actually have one of those in our own collection. Moniara Millennium Magic. One of the darkest blooms I've ever seen. It really was a showstopper because of its dark purple blooms. This is also only the second time I've ever seen one of these in bloom. Next on our list was Psychopsis, which has unique antenna-like petals. All of these were different cultivars. If you look closely, you'll notice the differences. I really like this next booth because of the water feature and the giant wooden animals. It also had a big variety of orchids and some I've actually never seen before. I like this Pleurophyllus sarracenia, likely named after the popular carnivorous plant due to its pitcher-shaped flowers. Microturangas harriotiana, one of my all-time favorite orchids, and this one had a bunch of flower spikes with even more flowers. I wasn't quite sure what this orchid is, but it had a subtle pink color and a dotted pattern on the labellum. I loved this dendrobium. It had such vibrant flowers, and it reminded me of summer. The grand prize winners were chosen by judges using a 100-point scoring system, looking at things like shape, color, size, number of flowers, and overall presentation. In other words, these orchids weren't just beautiful, they were crowned as the best of the best and some of the finest specimens at the entire show. In the first one, this Paphiopedilum that's been showing in the background won Best Hybrid. I was especially excited to see one of my old-time favorites selected as one of the show winners, Angraecum sesquipedale, also known as Darwin's orchid. It won Best Species, and this was easily the largest sesquipedale I've ever seen, with some of the biggest flowers and the most flowers I've ever seen on one plant. Next was this incredible cymbidium, absolutely covered in flowers. It had an astonishing number of flower spikes, and up close you could even spot subtle yellow tones and striped patterns in the blue. The Dendrobium speciosum really stood out for its large number of flower spikes and those bright yellow tones. It produces long sprays packed with flowers, almost giving it a delicate, lace-like look. Before we get to the winner, we have this incredibly lush, bushy, and slightly unruly looking specimen. This type of vanda is typically considered a miniature orchid. However, this plant was grown out to be remarkably large. And finally, the top winner of the show, Myrmecocattleya bordighera Carlo. This astonishing orchid picked up multiple gold medals and first place ribbons. It was not only awarded Best Specimen, but also crowned the grand champion of the entire show. This was my first time seeing a Disa, an uncommon terrestrial orchid from Africa that grows from tubers. It has a very unusual flower shape and beautiful pink tones. One of the most impressive, well-curated displays. It was like looking at a firework of colors. Also, one of the tallest displays with orchids as high as 10 feet up. No matter from which side or which angle you looked at it, it was exploding with color. Even though we've struggled getting Mastivalias to flower at home, we certainly got our fix of blooms at this display with hundreds of their blooms in different colors. An intriguing specimen was the striped Freddy. Sadly, I don't think we caught the name. If you know, please let me know in the comments. This one stood out to me because it had the biggest labellum of any Paphiopedilum I've ever seen, almost like a very fragile balloon that could pop at any moment. We were recently looking into getting and growing some Lepanthes. To our greatest delight, it turned out there was a whole display dedicated to just miniature Lepanthes. Our love for miniature orchids seems to be shared by the Japanese culture. They decorate their mini orchids with these handcrafted and painted pots from Japan. They were truly inspiring and immediately caught our attention. The display by the Malthus Foundation did not just showcase incredibly captivating colors. I like the display, baskets, and backgrounds were kept in black, creating a contrast that highlights the orchids themselves. Where other displays relied on big floodlights, they opted for a much more subtle and targeted approach for lighting, which we greatly appreciated. They brought an incredible variety of different oncidiums, each with its own unique colors and patterns. You couldn't help but be captivated by this astonishing display. With such a deep red, this Renanthera really stood out amongst all the other orchids, instantly becoming one of my favorites at the whole show. Speaking of favorites, this one also won my heart with its dense and vibrant flower clusters. The blotchy pattern was the cherry on top. We mentioned our love for mini orchids previously. This display was such a unique sight to see, being displayed in a coffee table-like vitrine. We thought it was almost like a horizontal version of our orchid display case in our kitchen. This Mediocalcar with its berry-like flowers, as well as this Pleurophallis, were easily my favorites from this display. I was drawn to this particular orchid because I'd never seen this species before. The flowers were quite big compared to the size of the plant. Easily my favorite display of the entire conference. At first glance, it didn't look too special. We actually walked past it a few times before noticing what made it so special. It's actually featuring orchid mantis? Mantis? Manti? It's actually featuring orchid mantises, who blended in so well. Let me know in the comments if you like them too. If enough people chime in and convince Mr. Moonfruit, I'd love to create a little biotope for them and feature them on the channel. this bulbophyllum stood out like a sore thumb, with its unusual shape, color, and flowers in the jungle of green. We didn't catch the name of this one, but it had the cutest little yellow flower. This genus I've never heard of before, and to me it looked like a tiny fern with flowers. I wouldn't mind this one in my own collection. These miniature Ingracums look just like the little version of Sesquipedale, including their very long and spindly nectar spurs, and as such obviously made it an instant favorite. Being my first big orchid show I've attended, I couldn't have imagined how incredible it really was. It was so fun to see orchids I've never seen before, and connect with orchid enthusiasts from all around the world. And I'm 100% looking forward to attending further events in the future. If you want to see more in pretty much every display and flower the Orchid Conference had to offer, we also posted a full tour you can check out right now. Let me know what your favorites were. Don't forget to subscribe for upcoming projects and travels, and I'll see you in the next video.